Morning. Welcome to regular council meeting for the Corporation of the Township of Minden Hills. Welcome to regular council meeting for the Corporation of the Township of Minden Hills for Thursday, May 28th, 2026. In reviewing today's agenda, there is a public meeting scheduled for a zoning bylaw amendment. There is also a delegation from JL Richards and Associates Limited related to the development approval process review they conducted for the township. Madam Clerk, please proceed with a roll call to confirm council attendance.
Counselor Sisson,
Present.
Counselor Saney sends regrets with notice. Counselor McKelvey,
Present.
Counselor Johannesson,
Present.
Counselor Ingram,
Present.
Deputy Marshall,
Present.
Mayor Carter.
Present. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michisagi territory in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and water since time immemorial. Call this meeting to order at 9:02 a.m. Madam Clerk, please proceed with reading resolution for the approval of the agenda.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Johannesson. Be it resolved that the May 28th, 2026 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All those in favor? That is carried. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, Madam Doherty, if you could join us, please read the resolution.
Moved by Deputy Marshall, seconded by Counselor McKelvey, that council adjourn its regular meeting at 9:03 a.m. to proceed into public meetings regarding Report 2623 Planning, Application for Zoning Bylaw Amendment, PLZBA 2026015, Barry.
All those in favor? That is carried. Today, there is one public meeting held by council under Section 34 of the Planning Act for application PLZBA 2026015. The public meeting is an opportunity to present to council and the public the details and background of the proposed amendment and to receive comments from the public and agencies before a council decision is made. If a person would otherwise have an ability to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Land Tribunal, but the person does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person is not entitled to appeal the decision. This public meeting is declared open and is to consider a zoning bylaw amendment for part of Lot 29, Concession 14 in the geographic township of Snowden, being 4951 Gullert Road. Would the planning department please summarize the purpose and effect of the proposed bylaw and provide any additional information and correspondence relevant to the application?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the application was submitted by Jacqueline Berry to fulfill a condition of consent application. The intent of that application is to sever a parcel of land from 4951 Glert Road for a lot addition to the adjacent farm property, which is under the same ownership. The subject property is designated rural, with a small portion in the northeast corner being designated environmental protection in the official plan and is currently zoned rural residential exception 9. The current RR9 zone provides specific development standards which permit one garage to be located 11 meters from the front lot line and buildings be constructed within 120 meters of a wetland adjacent to the property. The benefiting lot is zoned rural and hazard land. The resulting benefiting parcel will have an increased lot area and frontage and will continue to meet the regulations of the rural zone, and the hazard land zone would not be impacted by this amendment. The application serves to change the zoning of the land severed from for a lot addition from RR9 to rural zone so that the benefiting lot will have uniform zoning across the property other than the hazard land area. And zoning these lands to rural would also support the continued agricultural use already existing on this portion of the property. The retained lot will continue to meet the requirements of the RR zone, except for a reduced side yard setback for the existing dwelling. As a result of the lot addition, the existing dwelling would have a westerly side yard setback of 6.5 meters or 21.26 feet, whereas a setback of 10 meters or 32 feet is required. There is a significant tree and fence line separating the house from the neighboring lot, and therefore the reduced setback is considered to already functionally exist. The land subject to the severance are currently used for farming, and the zoning change will therefore have no impact on the continued agricultural use of the property. An Ontario land surveyor also confirmed that the garage is in fact only 10.4 meters or 34 feet from the front lot line. So the amendment would include this revision to legally recognize the correct setback and bring the property into compliance with the zoning bylaw. The existing provision of the RR9 zone that restricts any additional buildings or structures within the 120 meters of the wetland will be maintained to ensure its continued protection. Notice of the application was circulated to all neighboring property owners and agencies in accordance with the Planning Act on May 7th of this year. A sign was also posted on the property. MTO confirmed that the property is outside of their control area and had no comments. As well, Hydro One also confirmed having no comments on the application, and no other written public or agency comments were received.
Okay, does the applicant have a presentation or wish to make comments?
Through the chair, there are no attendees registered.
Okay, so I assume that is also members of the public and,
Through the chair, that's correct. We have nobody registered to speak today.
okay. That allows me to skip right down the page here. Are there any questions or comments from council? Seeing none. As a result of these proceedings, does the planning department have any recommendations or comments?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as outlined in the staff report, we're recommending that council receive report 26-23 planning as information, and that bylaw 26-49 being a bylaw to approve a zoning bylaw amendment for the land subject to PLZBA 2026-015 be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda.
Okay, if there are no further questions, this completes the public meeting process. Anyone wishing to obtain notice of the decision may do so by making a written submission requesting such to the township's clerk. I now declare this portion of the public meeting closed at 9:08 a.m. Okay, could you read the bylaw?
Moved by Councillor Henderson, seconded by Councillor Ingram, that council adjourn its public meeting and resumes its regular council meeting at 9:08 a.m.
All those in favor? It's carried. Delegations. Oh. We have JL Richards make a delegation, if you could come up to the table. Sure. There's two chairs, they're coming.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And as our consultants get settled, I'd just like to make an introduction. If you recall, council, about September of last year, council supported us seeking professional services to do a comprehensive review of the township's development approval processes and functions. That review has looked at things from end to end, looked at opportunities to modernize, looked at our organization and structure, and particularly our customer service. We did engage JL Richards and Associates And Emily Hazal and Allison Luma are here to present that comprehensive review that we've now completed. They're going to outline their process for input, their analysis, present a series of recommendations for change and improvement. And following their presentation, then we will look for council to endorse their recommendations from the report. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to turn it over to our consultants.
Great. Thank you, Cynthia. And thank you today, Mayor and Council, for the opportunity for us to present our findings of the development approval process review. Before I get started, how do I advance the slides on the okay, perfect. I like that. Great. Okay, so the project was initiated to take a comprehensive look at how the development approvals are currently delivered within the Township of Minden Hills, and to identify opportunities to modernize and improve the process over time. And you will see when we get to the end stages of our presentation, the over time piece becomes really important because we were looking for a phase implementation and roadmap that the township can follow. Important to note that the review was not intended to focus on one single application type or one isolated issue, as mentioned by Cynthia at the start. It really was to examine the overall end-to-end development approval process system. And so our work really was guided by a core question of how the township can continue to improve service delivery while managing increasing development pressures, rapid legislative changes, evolving customer service expectations, and organizational change. The review also recognizes that the township has already begun a lot of these modernization efforts internally. And so this work is really intended to build upon those initiatives and that foundation to have more of a structured roadmap for implementation moving forward. Slide, please. We can go to the next one as well, too. Okay, sorry, and next slide as well, sorry. Fantastic. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so the review involved three major components. First, we completed a current state analysis that was really trying to set the tone for where the township is at right now. And so we reviewed a lot of pieces of that, and I'll walk you through the areas of assessment in the next few slides. But at a high level, we were looking at workflows, staffing structures, service delivery practices, technology, and the operating environment or legislative responsibilities. Following that, or a little bit concurrently, was we conducted comprehensive stakeholder consultations. This included with township staff, council, businesses, community members, and the development industry representatives to better understand operational realities and the applicant's experiences going through that process. Finally, we took both the current state analysis and the stakeholder consultations, and we synthesized those findings into a practical set of recommendations and a phased implementation roadmap that we'll walk you through at the end of this presentation. I think importantly here, while we're going through this process and other projects that we've worked on together, many of the themes that were identified throughout this review are not necessarily unique to Minden Hills. However, I think it is important to note that the township has been proactive in undertaking this review as part of its broader commitment to modernization and continuous improvement, which really reflects the importance that council and the township are placing on strengthening the development approval service delivery moving forward. Next slide, please. Okay, so when we were going through the current state analysis, and a lot of the framework that you'll see for that evaluation was based on these 5 areas of assessment and our service delivery lens. The review was organized around looking at governance structure and organizational priorities, the operating environment, people, process, and technology. An important lens throughout the review was understanding the connection between the internal operational realities that the township is experiencing and blending that with the customer, the applicant experience moving forward. So for example, an operational pressure related to workload or capacity, coordination, or evolving processes or workflows often can then be experienced externally by the applicant as uncertainty around timelines, status visibility, or process navigation. So this connection of going through the current state analysis based on these areas of assessment and linking them with the kind of lived experience of the applicant going through the process becomes a consistent theme throughout our report, through our recommendations and into our implementation plan. Next slide, please. Okay, we put together an organizing framework, which it's called the Development Approvals Maturity Model. This framework kind of helps structure the assessment. And so we wanted to provide a consistent framework for evaluating where the township currently sits on the different dimensions related to governance, operating environment, people, process, and technology. And so where future improvements could move the organization over time. So the model ranges from ad hoc and transactional to optimized and trusted. Based on our assessment, and we can actually go to the next slide as well. Based on our assessment, so you'll see the red dots are kind of the current state and the green is the future state. So based on our assessment and working through the current state analysis, as well as with some of our customer journey mapping and stakeholder consultations, many of the areas that the township sits currently are mostly within that defined and developing, with some of the components moving towards the standardized and predictable. What this means at a high level is that the foundational work is already occurring, particularly around modernization and technology and some of those workflow processes. But a lot of processes and expectations are still dependent on staff knowledge, manual coordination, and evolving practices. The intent of the recommendation, so where we kind of have placed you in the current state and to the future state, you'll notice that the future state isn't all the way over to the very end of the optimized and trusted, and that's by design. We're trying to make sure that the roadmap that we're putting together for you over time can, we're not looking to transform the township in the next 6 months to the end of the maturity model. We're trying to take this as strategic and iterative steps that we can kind of move you towards that optimized and trusted. So the goal is to kind of build progressively on the strong foundations that you already have, and then improve that consistency, reduce the variability, and create a more predictable and transparent customer service over time. Next slide, please. And next one. Thank you. So the full report you'll see is quite comprehensive. Just for timing today, we took what was quite a comprehensive current state and what we heard and collapsed it into just a few slides. So happy during Q&A, we want to dive into this any deeper, but wanted to just at a high level share kind of the current state versus what we heard. So that's connecting the system realities and the operational realities in-house at the township with how the stakeholders or the applicants may actually experience the process themselves. One of the strongest themes that emerged was that many stakeholder frustrations were not necessarily tied to one individual issue or department. So often they were experiencing a cumulative effect of the broad sister realities. So staffing pressures and capacity, evolving processes, changing legislation, communication gaps, external agency dependencies, et cetera. Often it was hitting on a lot of these different facets, not one particular piece. So again, we're looking at it quite systematically. At the time, stakeholders consistently recognize that staff are knowledgeable through a lot of our conversations with them, professional and committed to supporting applicants. So the findings are not framed around individual performance outcomes or concerns. It's rather they reflect opportunities to strengthen the overall system and improve clarity, coordination, and predictability for both staff and the applicants throughout the process, development application process. From a governance perspective, the township is operating during a period of organizational transition and modernization, with a clear willingness to improve service delivery while process and operational expectations continue to evolve. Stakeholders describe the process at times as cautious and sometimes difficult to navigate, particularly around timelines, roles, and understanding requirements early in the process. We also heard that external agencies and external dependencies influence timelines and applicant expectations in ways that are always not fully visible to the public. So a key theme throughout the recommendations that we'll move into shortly is including improving clarity around expectations, communication, workflows, and operational realities. Next slide, please. For people in process, staff are operating within a relatively lean organizational structure and often carry broad responsibilities across multiple functions. So a significant amount of institutional knowledge currently exists through staff experience and coordination practices. Stakeholders consistently spoke about staff interactions through many workflows still heavily reliant on manual coordination and evolving procedures and multiple intake pathways. So the stakeholders often describe the process as iterative, with requirements and expectations often evolving throughout the review process. One of the major objectives of the recommendations is to therefore standardize the workflows and service expectations and application requirements and internal coordination practices. Next slide, please. And then finally, technology, which is our last dimension for that evaluation for the current state versus what we heard. A lot of the technology modernization is currently underway within the township, particularly with new tools that we've started to implement around cloud permit and SharePoint. However, the environment still includes a mix of digital and manual workflows across multiple systems and processes. So stakeholders consistently describe limited visibility into the application process where files sit within the review process. There was strong support for clearer online information, improved submission pathways, and expanded self-serve functionality. Importantly, it's to note here with technology, it's best supported with clear workflows, service expectations, and aligned operational practices. So while the recommendation focuses, or most of our recommendations focus on systems and the tools and the softwares that you're using, but also the broader process improvements. And I'll note just briefly before I hand it over to Allison to get us kickstarted on our recommendations, that again, a lot of, the buckets that we have, so around governance, operational realities, people, process, technology, these aren't mutually exclusive buckets. A lot of overlaps and dependencies occur, and we tried to pull those out in our recommendations. So just keep that in mind. We do have them organized that way, but there's a lot of codependencies between those areas of assessment that we've tried to highlight throughout both the recommendations and the implementation. And I'll pass it over to Allison just to start with our recommendations.
Thank you, Emily. Right, so we actually have a number of recommendations. They're broken down. I think there's about 15 in total, although there's a couple that have a part A and part B. They're grouped into 6 broad categories. So governance, structures and organization, operating environment, people, process, technology, and then we finish off with a benchmark analysis. Next slide, please. So our first recommendation ties into your process with your strategic plan, and to better leverage that strategic planning process to identify areas of focus and inform the overall service delivery, in particular within your planning and building department. The key rationale behind that is that as the township moves forward with their new strategic plan, there's an opportunity to clearly translate council's priorities into guiding principles for that service delivery. Key activities here include establishing high-level goals to guide service delivery with detailed approaches as determined by staff. This would also be measured through clear linkages between the strategic plan priorities and departmental work plans in particular. The outcomes of this are intended to be a clear organizational priority established through the strategic plan, staff having a shared understanding of priority areas and intended service outcomes and goals, strategic priorities that are consistently reflected in service delivery and decision-making, and council priorities that are reflected in a more consistent and customer-focused approval process. Next slide, please. So the second recommendation is broken down into a part A and a part B. Again, looking at the clarity of roles between staff and council in particular. The rationale here is that increased clarity between the operational and technical roles of staff, tasks where a formal delegation of authority to staff may be required from council, and then the role of council is all needs a better understanding. So key activities here are to provide clarity on council's decision-making authority, to update the delegation bylaw to reflect the matters that could or can be assigned to staff, to establish clear reporting mechanisms to council for any of those matters that are delegated to staff, and then to establish a revised procedural framework reflecting the operational functioning and where appropriate approval rests. The outcomes here are intended to be a clear procedural framework being established. Routine matters can begin to shift from council to staff through a defined framework, including administrative and technical independence and delegated authority where appropriate. Council time is better focused on strategic and policy-related matters. It also provides for an increased share of routine approvals to be handled through delegated authority, and routine approvals may progress more efficiently and consistently through the process. Next slide, please. So in particular here, recommendation 2B looks at the consent process, and in particular, how the township is nested within that process within the county as a whole. So the township's role, it has two key functions here. One is the pre-consultation process when an applicant comes in, and through that process, staff would be flagging official planning requirements, any studies that are required, confirm the zoning, etc. At that point, then the decision and the approval authority for that consent rests with the Land Division Committee of the county. And staff as the township comes in a second role here, providing comments to that Land Division Committee, who then ultimately make the decision. So the second recommendation here is to structure and streamline the township's role in that process, to clarify the roles of applicants, staff, and council, to distinguish between operational requirements, responsibilities, and reporting relationships. And the overall target outcomes from this is that staff roles and operational requirements of the consent process are clearly documented at the township level to provide council and staff with an understanding of township's role and how it's nested in that county land division committee. Township responsibilities and operational procedures within the consent process are more efficient and consistent for applicants and staff. Reduced delays caused by procedural uncertainty, duplication, and unnecessary steps. So again, this is about efficiency within the process and leveraging the staff and council's role to be as efficient as possible. Next slide, please. So we're now going into the operating environment recommendations, and we have 3 of those. The first one is to develop and publish a consolidated development approvals manual. This is to provide for ease of access of information to essential and effective development approvals, the approvals process, and in particular in that service delivery lens, to improve applicants' ability to understand the requirements, to navigate the complex and changing operating environment, and communicate with staff directly, understand timelines, quality of submissions, and the overall confidence in that municipal decision-making process. Key activities here are to actually gather existing information and create this manual and ensure that the manual is aligned with current legislation, bylaws, and emerging procedural expectations. The key outcomes of having this development approvals manual is to provide development approvals information that's consolidated into a single accessible source, to improve the transparency for applicants and the public, and to improve the communication of the operating environment, including the legislative requirements. Next slide, please. So recommendation number 4 is to strengthen the internal communication practices within the development approvals operating environment. This is the rationale behind this is to provide for effective development approvals that depend on whether the operating environment supports clear, coordinated, and consistent communication. This recommendation addresses the internal conditions required for the planning and building functions to operate with consistent communication, shared expectations, and coordinated service delivery. Key outcomes for this is communication across the planning and building department that's dependable. Applicants experience fewer mixed messages and less confusion, and improved internal communication that better supports coordinated service delivery. Next slide, please. So recommendation number 5 is to advance the interim zoning bylaw updates to improve clarity and consistency. Again, the rationale behind this is that to provide better functionality, and that would help strengthen the consistency and support more predictable approvals. Some of this work has already been started. So as low-hanging fruit, the easy thing is to incorporate all of your zoning bylaw amendments into one consolidated zoning bylaw document, and then to also address some of the key issues that you will see have been coming up consistently in the municipality. So again, this would be reflected in minor variance applications or zoning bylaw amendments if you tend to see the same things coming up again and again. It's just to take a targeted look at this and update the bylaw accordingly so that it's more responsive to the issues in the municipality. Recognizing within this that in the planning field right now in Ontario, we are in a substantial state of flux. We have Bill 98. We just also had third reading on. So while the dust begins to settle with all of this upper tier policy work that will eventually trickle down, tidying up the zoning bylaw, making that more efficient, addressing some of those issues that are not policy dependent, but maybe have locally been a little bit of a stickler for you, is low hanging fruit and easy to achieve. Next slide, please. So recommendation number 6, this actually falls under the people category, but to clarify and formalize the internal roles and supervisory accountability across the building departments. This is particularly important in an environment where staff are managing broad responsibilities, increasing service expectations, and ongoing modernization of the various tools that you have. Key activities in this would be to review the current roles across the departments and clarify responsibility for supervision, decision support, coordination, and external communication. The key outcomes here are more consistent internal coordination and supervisory accountability across the planning, building, and bylaw functions, reduced reliance on informal person-specific practices to manage files, answer questions, or resolve uncertainty, and that roles remain clear despite turnover and despite increases in workload pressure. So this is really getting at consistency in terms of how that service is delivered. Okay, next slide, please. This is again another recommendation that was broken down into a part 1 and part 2. So recommendation 7A is to refine the planning department's roles and responsibilities, review their scope and process triggers within the building permit review process. The key rationale here is that planning staff are frequently involved in multiple aspects of the building permit review process. And in some cases, there is some duplication between the two functions, planning and building. And in some cases, planning doesn't necessarily need to be involved in that building permit process on a specific scenario. So key activities here are to review the planning role in the building permit review process, define and clarify planning and building department roles in the zoning compliance review in particular, and to coordinate the review and role of clarification with the cloud permit workflow system. And again, this is where some of the technology comes in. My understanding is that certain things in the cloud permit system are automatically assigned to staff or automatically forwarded to staff. And even in situations where it's been vetted in advance by planning staff. So it's about getting some kind of efficiencies in that system. So the key target outcomes here are reduced dependency on planning staff for routine building permits where a planning opinion is not required, faster permit issuance and clearer workflows, and a shared internal understanding of where the professional planning judgment adds value to the building permit process and where it does not. Next slide, please. Okay, recommendation 7B is to reassess and align the planning department's role in related cross departmental responsibilities. So again, this is about providing clarity in terms of planning's role in other departments and other processes where there is a planning opinion required or where there is a role for planning and where it is not required. Key outcomes here are a better alignment of planning's capacity with core planning, policy and development review functions, and improved internal awareness of the organizational impacts of shifting responsibilities and improved organizational capacity. And this again, this is geared towards efficiency. So as there is an increase in development activity in the township, as the roles are becoming broader, it's about enabling the planning staff to really service those core functions, and then certainly being involved in those other processes where they provide value, but where they're not providing value, to provide better clarity of how those processes should be operating. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we're now going into some of the process-related recommendations. I will do this first one for recommendation number 8 because it's somewhat planning related, and then I'll hand it over to Emily and she will take the back end of the recommendations. So recommendation number 8 is to develop and implement an application circulation resource to clarify who reviews what, when, and for what purposes. The rationale again is that development approvals involve coordinated review by multiple internal departments and in some cases external agencies. This recommendation focuses on standardizing circulation, internal review, coordination, and response expectations so that files move through the review process more consistently and efficiently. And the key target outcomes here are a more coordinated internal review process across departments, improved predictability in how multi-department input is requested, received, and consolidated, and internal circulation that supports clear applicant communication, faster application processing, and improved file management. Next slide, please. And with that, I'm going to hand the back end of the recommendations over to Emily.
Thank you, Allison. So recommendation number 9 is still within that process bucket. And it really is focusing on formalizing and standardizing the internal workflows and standard operating procedures, or SOPs. The township has already begun and initiated these activities by developing draft SOPs, or standard operating procedures, and workflow documentation in several areas. So the recommendation is more about advancing and operationalizing that work. By developing standardized workflows, checklists, documented procedures, the township can improve clarity, support onboarding, strengthen operational continuity, and reduce reliance on informal knowledge transfer. So this recommendation also recognizes that not all approvals flow through one system, for example, cloud permit. So the recommendation includes both cloud permit-based workflows and parallel processes requiring separate coordination. Ultimately, the recommendation is looking to support stronger operational alignment and create the foundations for future technology integration and service modernization. Next slide. Okay, recommendation number 10 is also within the process bucket of our areas of assessments. And this is to focusing on strengthening service expectation and applicant communication practices. So stakeholders and applicants that we talked throughout our consultations frequently identified opportunities to improve clarity around timelines, points of contact, completeness, application completeness expectations, and next steps within the approval process. So this recommendation aims to provide a more predictable communication practice and clearer guidance for applicants throughout that review process. Importantly for this recommendation, it's not intended to guarantee fixed approval timelines for every application, because that can depend on the complexity of the application. Instead, the focus here is on improving transparency, communication, and applicant understanding throughout the process. Next slide, please. Okay. Recommendation 11 is now moved into our bucket of technology. And it's really looking to establish a broader data and technology roadmap for the township. As I noted earlier on in the presentation, the township is already making important investments in modernizations with new systems and software. But the systems and workflows and data practices are still evolving across departments and functions, so at times can be a bit siloed. The recommendation provides a framework for aligning those efforts into a broader, more coordinated future state model. This includes, you'll see within the implementation, starting by clarifying system roles that you currently have in place, improving any integrations between different systems that you have for different roles that they're helping with, reducing data or duplicate data entry where possible, strengthening reporting capabilities over time, and supporting applicant-facing tools and workflow automation over time. Importantly, this recommendation is not necessarily about adding new software. It's about ensuring that the software and technology that's powering a lot of your process approval systems align with your actual operational workflows that have been documented through this process, your service standards, and the organizational priorities, and enable staff to focus on more of those high-touch, high-value interactions with the applicants through the process cycle. So what we're hoping with the technology recommendations is if we have smarter, more integrated systems, it allows then the township to have more of those one-on-one or high value interactions. And then we get the software and the technology to do some of the heavy lifting in the back end. Next slide, please. This is our last technology recommendation, recommendation number 12. Kind of goes hand in hand, but it's really focusing on applicant-facing tools and communication. So strengthening the public-facing side of the process. So stakeholders consistently express interest in clearer information, easier navigation, and more accessible digital resources. The recommendation focuses on improving, for example, website content, standardizing guidance materials, publishing clear timelines and expectations, and developing more self-serve resources for applicants where applicable. The goal is to improve the applicant understanding early in the process while allowing staff to, again, focus their time on higher value interactions and technical review activities. This recommendation also closely aligns with earlier recommendations around the development of the development approval manual and the standard operating procedures recommendation, so that public-facing information reflects internal workflows and service expectations. Next slide, please. Okay, and then our last recommendation falls a little bit outside of our standard buckets, but here is one around benchmark comparative analysis, so a fee review and cost recovery. This recommendation focuses on comprehensive review of the development application fees and cost recovery. So it recognizes that the development approvals require significant staff time, coordination, and administrative resources. The township has already begun some high-level analysis work internally, and this recommendation is just building on this foundation and is really more of a longer-term recommendation for consideration. The intent is to better understand the resources required by application type, benchmark against comparable municipalities, and improve transparency around fee structures. And importantly, this recommendation is not necessarily or simply about increasing fees. It's more about supporting more informed operational and financial planning while ensuring that fee structures align appropriately with service delivery requirements over time. So that's our final recommendation, and we just have a few slides. I'll try to go through them briefly because this has been a long presentation, but just briefly for the implementation approach. Great, thank you. The implementation roadmap was intentionally designed as a phased approach, so not all recommendations should occur simultaneously, and many of the recommendations build upon the foundational work that's completed in early stages. So kind of our short and medium term recommendations feed into that longer term monitoring. The short-term phase focuses on governance direction, role clarity, foundational tools, and establishing consistent standards. The medium term focuses on embedding standardized practices, aligning systems and workflows, and implementing more integrated service delivery processes or practices. And the long-term phase focuses on optimization and that continuous improvement lens, and really about maintaining and improving that consistency and predictability over time. An important principle behind this roadmap to keep in mind is that modernization and continuous improvement is not done through a single project or a fixed outpoint. So it's really about an ongoing organizational evolution that requires that phased implementation, adaptation, and refinement over time. Next slide, please. Thank you. So for the short term, which we've defined as within that 0 to 12 months, again, is primarily focusing on that foundational work that can begin immediately and is largely within the township's operational control. Should also be noted that a lot of the tasks that we have within the short term have already, many of them have been partially initiated, if not initiated, as you'll see in the full report by recommendations if any of those activities have been initiated. So a lot of the work has already started to begin for these short-term ones, or low-hanging fruit, as Allison put it. So this includes clarifying governance direction, refining roles and responsibilities, establishing those service standards, standardizing workflows, and beginning the consolidation of the guidance materials. So that development approval guidance procedures book and the SOPs. It also includes auditing systems and workflows to better understand current strengths, gaps, and modernization opportunities. A lot of the work has been done in auditing workflows as part of the work that we've done with the township. So really the focus here is looking at the that technology component and looking at the existing systems, what's working well with them, where there are gaps, and starting to document that as early stages to feed into a larger data and technology roadmap. Many of these short-term initiatives are foundational dependencies for more integrated work in the medium and long term, and technology improvements proposed later in the roadmap. Next slide, please. Okay. The medium term focuses on embedding and operationalizing that foundational work that we built within the short-term recommendations. So this includes implementing the updated delegation structures, finalizing those standard operating procedures and workflow tools, aligning technologies with those standardized practices, and launching more integrated digital workflows and applicant facing tools to help support in some of those communication pieces. This phase also includes a comprehensive fee review in the later stages, or initiating that, and further advancement towards broader zoning modernization and initiatives as the policy context stabilizes. By this stage, if we go back to the earlier slides and we think about that maturity model, we'd be moving towards a more coordinated and predictable development approval process with stronger integration between systems and processes and communication practices. And then last slide. Long-term, we're really looking at the recommendations, focusing on that continuous improvement and long-term sustainability. So as I said at the beginning, or for our implementation approach, this is something we kind of think about this document as a living, breathing tool that you can use towards those goals of continuous improvement and long-term sustainability. So this shift focused less on creating systems and more towards refining and maintaining them over time. So includes monitoring of those service standards, workflow performance, technology optimization, digital integration, and the applicant experience improvements. So ideally, if we can start to track some of those metrics that we've laid out within our recommendations, we will have more information to know how we would refine some of our communication protocols, workflows, the types of tools that we're providing to applicants to for assistance throughout that process. So it recognizes again that the development approvals operate within evolving legislative and organizational framework. And so we really encourage the need for flexibility to adapt those processes, roles, technologies, service expectations over time as development pressures, staffing, legislation, and community priorities continue to evolve. So ultimately, our roadmap is intended to support a more transparent, predictable, and resilient development approval system for both staff and for applicants. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I think we'll open it up for questions. I think from my standpoint, we would have a comprehensive document with several really strong recommendations. We have a roadmap. it would be our intention if council endorses the recommendations today, you would receive quarterly updates on how we're progressing with the recommendations. If there is anything that we need to do a deeper dive into, any other resources or supports needed, you would receive standalone reports related to those. At this point, I would just look for our consultants to confirm the roadmap is also taking into consideration existing resources as well. So
Yep. So for the roadmap, you can see this a little bit within the roadmap and implementation, but it's also documented by recommendation. We have kind of a resources section that outlines some of that. So we tried to keep it or to at least highlight ones that are within the capacity of the township right now and ones that may require further support.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think it's fair to open it up to council questions right now. We're very pleased with the document and see it as a clear roadmap going forward. Thank you.
Okay, questions? Councillor Ingram.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the report. Very comprehensive. A lot of information to take in. Is the report done with the intent that internal staff can implement the recommendations, or do we need outside help to do that?
For the majority, what we were trying to look for, and some of that is through the implementation plan of the short term, medium term, and long term. A lot of the short term, those activities have been initiated and are within staff capacity. As we move into some of the larger initiatives, we do highlight within the recommendation section that this might be one that would potentially require additional support. It's always a balance of, again, and maybe that has to relate to more to timelines. So if there's additional support to help with some of those, then timelines could potentially be moved up for some of those as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to augment, I think Councillor Ingram, it would be things like optimizing some of our technology, for instance, that is kind of outside of our expertise area. But we see most of any supports we would need to be short-term or temporary, if you will.
Questions? Councillor McKelvey.
Thanks very much. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? It's a little overwhelming, I'm not going to lie. But I do have a couple of questions. Recommendation 1 talks about leverage the strategic planning process. And I guess maybe my question is not necessarily to you ladies as it is to staff. Where are we on that? Because that's something.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we intend over the next cycle to present a strategic plan to council
Cycle being.
between now and July. And throughout this strategic plan is going to be that more overarching document, but you will see priorities related to streamlining services and customer service and those sorts of things that are coming through strongly here. What we would see is high-level strategic priorities in our strategic plan that then we develop annual work plans to tie back to. And this document, I think it's going to be strategic priority number 2. This will form a lot of the work plan under one or two of those strategic priorities.
Okay, so recommendation 2A talks about delegation of authority. Can you give us some examples? Because I know we delegated site plan approval. There was something else we delegated. I'm just wondering, like, what else should we be considering or?
I think, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the processes that has the biggest potential to streamline is especially with your pre-consultation process for land division. So my understanding is that pre-consultation is brought to council before it is passed along up to the county. That is something that pre-consultation function is typically very technical in nature, in that it's talking again about things like official plan conformity, it's talking about studies that are required, zoning, that sort of thing, that staff can provide to the applicant in terms of giving the applicant direction on what they need to have a complete application in that process. That is something that could be, you wouldn't have to formally delegate that to staff because that is something that's completely within staff's purview to be doing right now, as opposed to having it come to council. You may want to consider that if that was handed over to staff, that perhaps there was a monitoring requirement that came in. So again, my understanding is that your building permit activity is reported to you on a quarterly basis. Perhaps in that same quarterly meeting, staff also report back to council on the number of consent applications they've had, how many have been approved, how many are in process. And so it becomes more of a monitoring of council, a monitoring function, as opposed to council being operationally involved in that process. So that's one example where there definitely could be some efficiencies.
Ms. McKelvey?
Again, probably more directed at staff, but recommendation 2B talks about initiate information working session with council. Is that something you're going to do before the end of our term, or is that something you're towards?
I think Councilor McKelvey, like yourselves, we're still working through all of the recommendations and the timing for implementation.
Okay, so the other, I'm not sure this is under operating environment recommendation 3 or more of the technology later, but it was brought to my attention that if you click an application for zoning amendment or pre-consultation or whatever it might be on our website, you don't get the application. It takes you to the policy. So I'm assuming that's the type of thing, like that gets frustrating for the public where they're going around in circles. Well, okay, how do I find the actual application? Which when this was brought to my attention, I checked and it's like, yeah, you're right. You just go in circles. You can't find it. So like those should be easy, quick. For sure. So I just, it's recommendation 3, but I don't know who prioritizes this. Is this something you're going to prioritize or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, again, we've got the recommendations. It is our job now to take this away and look at how we best operationalize this. Yeah, so I mean, I'll be working with our staff team to prioritize where we are. As was indicated, some of the recommendations are underway. And some are dependent on us completing something before we can start something else. So yes, we'll be putting together a much more comprehensive work plan following council's endorsement of the recommendations.
So my other one is the whole consolidation of the zoning bylaw. And I know that we've talked about this for over 2 years because like that's a technical or a really big slowdown in operations because I'm sure if Amanda gets a zoning compliance request, she has to go back and check and see if we've ever had another zoning. Like, so council made that a priority over 2 years ago. In 25, we were told, okay, they couldn't get this done without help. We hired somebody to help us get this done. We were told in October that the consolidated zoning bylaw would be to council the text portion in December, and it still hasn't. Like, that's a really important, in my opinion, an important first step to get this done, because then the building department, I'm assuming, can look at it and go, okay, we don't need planning's help to figure out if this can go here or there. The consolidation of our zoning bylaw to me has to be a priority, and I'm not sure why it hasn't happened, because we never got told after we hired somebody last year that didn't actually work.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we had a student who worked on consolidating our document. And my understanding is, we just need to review and finalize it.
Yeah, one,
Thanks. It talks about 7B people. Clear departmental understanding of planning's role versus other departments' responsibilities. And then it talks about ownership of road allowance access and license of occupation functions. So you're thinking because it's not under the Planning Act, it doesn't have to be dealt with by the planning department? Like it's more of a municipal act thing, so it goes to the clerk's department, is that what you're thinking?
So through you, Mr. Mayor. This again would be part of that sort of critical look at the development review process as a whole. So when that development review handbook was being put together, that's also going to cross connect with other situations where there are processes that are not necessarily development review related, but where planning staff are involved in them. And then that critical lens of, is there value from having planning staff involved in this? Is there a planning expertise that is required? If not, how can this more efficiently be arranged? So that would be part of sort of the critical view of the system as staff begins to work through it.
And just, I know somewhere, and it may have been in the really detailed report, that there's opportunities to go and use another township. Like, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's all kinds of opportunities to go out and almost cut and paste, change the name of the township. We can go to Dysart's website and click off a bunch of things. Like, is that what we're thinking? We're not gonna reinvent a wheel here that we don't need to.
Through you, Mayor, I think that, yeah, best practice is to definitely understand if there's things that are working really well in other municipalities that you can incorporate. I think what you're talking about, for within the report, that was around the development procedures guidebook, and there are some really great examples out there that could be the starting point for you. So you don't have to start from scratch with the publication of that sort. You could start with one that has worked well, and planners will say, well, best practice, and then that can kind of be your foundation, and then you build from there.
As far as the staff follow up and reports back to us, I guess that should get dealt with your report later. As opposed to asking the consultants, like, I want to talk about the follow-up when we get updates on that sort of thing. You mentioned quarterly, so I just.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it would be my intention to update you quarterly on the recommendations in this report. And if there is anything that it needs a deeper dive, you would get individual standalone reports.
No, I realize that. But if council wants to discuss that thought process, do we do that at the next stage on the agenda where your report about this, or do we do it now?
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble
Okay.
understanding your question.
Like if you want things more often than that, things are not going to change often enough for me to bring monthly reports to you. It will be quarterly reports.
I just think that this review and is probably one of the most important things that we have been presented with during the term I've been on council. So I just really need to make sure, personally, as my opinion, we need to make sure this really moves forward and makes improvements. So I was thinking monthly reports, at least for a while, until we see.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there will not be enough for me to report on. You can put it on your agenda for monthly, and I will likely tell you there's not enough that's changed in the last month for me to report. I would really appreciate quarterly reports. If I have to bring you something between that quarterly report, I will absolutely do so.
So, this is transformational, obviously. So I paraphrase that old adage of, you know, when you're surrounded by alligators, sometimes it's difficult to remember you're there to drain the swamp. You know, the alligators in this part are all of the requests for services that are coming from the public. And if we take in the short term, I think there's, you know, 14 recommendations that are going along. So again, you've got all the day-to-day activity. And by the way, there's these 14 things I'm supposed to be working on. So obviously, you're not going to recommend to us something that's impossible to do, but you know, tell me a bit more about the experience that you've had with other organizations going through something like this as to, you know, how easy is it to keep to these timelines, and how easy is it to keep going forward, and what are the things that you may have to put into place to ensure that you keep going forward?
I will say that in the development of the implementation that we put together, this was in collaboration with the township staff quite closely. So I made sure that when we were talking with Cynthia and Amanda and Tim, that I wasn't putting something in short term that was not unreasonable. And again, a lot of those activities through conversations that we've had with them were already initiated. And so we're wanting to highlight that things are happening and they're working towards them. And so that's why they felt that they would be reasonable to do within the next 12 months. I think from the like a change management perspective, when you're going through this, again, it's trying to make sure that there's not always easy solutions to some of this transformational change that we're putting forward to you, and to make sure that we are, you know, I mean, having those check-ins and measuring things as they go along to make sure that we're staying on the right track. So the implementation framework is also trying to act as a way that you can keep that measurement over time to make sure that you're staying on track. I would encourage that there's flexibility in timelines. A lot of these tasks, sometimes when they start, can open up other avenues. And so really we want to stay kind of on our North Star of what we're trying to do here, which is to improve, you know, the development approval process from that customer service deliver standpoint, but also taking into consideration, as you said, that there's people behind the scenes that are trying to implement all of these things. And so again, we put forward those timelines, not as exact dates by when things have to be done, but more so as an implementation framework for consideration, thinking of it more as do these early activities so that it can help you get into some of these bigger recommendations. So try to get some of that foundational work, you know, going, and it already is going, and then that can lead into some of those larger ones. Sorry.
I would just add here that, that this is, managing the expectations is that incremental change is what you're gearing for. So fast is smooth, smooth is fast, right? So small incremental changes at where there's time for feedback loops, where you actually see, okay, is this progressive? Are we achieving what we want to before you start and bite off the next big piece? So again, it's about managing those expectations of how fast this change is going to take. It's transformational, yes, but with the long view horizon in mind.
Are there any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Marshall, that Council receives report 2622 administration and development approvals process review as information, and that Council endorses the recommendations as outlined in the consultant's report.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Yeah, that's all. So, well, We will continue with the adoption of the minutes from the previous meetings. This is regular council meeting, May 14th. Were there any comments or amendments? Seeing none, let's read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey. Be it resolved that council approves the May 14th, 2026 regular council meeting minutes.
All those in favor? That is carried. In terms of mayor's report, it's amazing how things change from a few short weeks ago when we seemed to be underwater and having a whole aquatic park in our downtown area. We've gone to now things such as opening up the boardwalk and the new features along the boardwalk with the Master Gardeners and the Horticultural Society, to lots of different activities, including a truck rodeo yesterday that I understand we did very well in. I was a little apprehensive when I first got there and saw snowplows on the truck. I hadn't checked the weather, but I was still a bit nervous. Everybody, last 2 weeks ago, I guess in the long weekend, we really had the first influx of cottagers who came back. Our world now changes, and we have lots of activities and lots of things going on, including the county fair, which is coming up in 2 weeks or so, I believe it is, and a number of other things happening at the cultural center and community center and so on. So everybody, let's transition to summer and get ready and get involved and have fun. Along with all that is some things that are happening to make our town look a little better. And Councillor Johannesson, I think you wanted to speak to that a little bit.
Thank you. Today I would like to give a special shout out and heartfelt thank you to Jim Ecclestone and his team for taking the initiative to bring new life, color, and vibrancy to the core of our community. Their dedication and hard work is helping revitalize the heart of Minden Hills, is making a meaningful difference and helping showcase the beauty of the town we are so proud to call home. These acts of leadership and community pride have a big impact, and his efforts are noticed and deeply appreciated. Thank you for helping make our downtown more welcoming, beautiful, and full of life for residents and cottagers and visitors alike.
I think we can all agree to that. It will be again, it will be something that will change Minden and as it moves forward. I think it's a wonderful initiative.
Could I just add something for your mayor's report from county council yesterday?
Sure.
Just that we had, and maybe you don't want to speak to it because you're on the committee, but we had Habitat for Humanity come to county council yesterday and do a presentation. And I'm not sure if council members have watched the presentation, but I think it would be really worthwhile to look at what they're doing within the county, the number of units that they're proposing and working on, and check out the little slideshow because it's really impressive and really exciting for the county. So thank you. And for anybody watching this video too, to go to the county link and check it out because it's pretty incredible.
I mean, it's over 110 new units. Now, I don't want to say unfortunately that most of them are in Dysart, but one is as close to the Minden border as you possibly can get. So that it is good news along with our 35 units over here that hopefully will start to make a difference and have not only supportive housing for a number of people, but affordable housing for people who are just starting out and workers and so on. So it is all good news. All right, moving on to the Roma Board, Councillor Saini is off in Burley Falls or something like that for the teeny tiny summit. So that Roma initiative. So we'll move right on to correspondence and communications. These are consent items. I'll let you read the.
So Councillor McKelvey actually requested two items being pulled for discussion today. The motion is moved by Councillor Hanson, seconded by Councillor Ingram. The council directs staff to pull forward items for discussion. 11.3 U-Links call for community research projects, and 11.7 Matt Duchesne Charity Golf Classic request fee waiver for 10 permit.
All right, and
So I'll continue on with
Yep.
just the regular correspondence. Move. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Mayor. All in favor?
all in favor, that is carried.
Thank you. So the next resolution is just the rest of the communications. Moved by Councillor Sisson, seconded by Deputy Marshall, that council receives correspondence and communication items 11.1, 11.2, and 11.4 through to 11.6 as information.
All those in favor, that is carried. 11.3, the U-Links call for community research projects. Councilor McKelvey.
We talked about this last year, I believe. And like, this is a great opportunity if there's anything at all that staff can think of that we would utilize their services. But again, last year we talked about them helping us with this whole zoning bylaw and official plan consolidation. So, is there any thought to us needing more help to get that done, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, at the time, I'd have to go back in my notes. At the time, whatever we were proposing didn't fit with their criteria, or they didn't have folks that could help with whatever we were proposing. We're always willing to look at U-Links as a resource. So we will be looking at areas that would fit their criteria and see if we can submit a project.
Okay, so back to the whole zoning bylaw and official plan consolidation. I remember, Mr. Mayor, you said they could help us with that, but we didn't go that option, but we still don't have this done, and I'm just wanting to make sure, is there something else needed, or could we use U-Links for that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will take that away and look into.
Thank you.
Right.
So council, are you just receiving it as information at this time? So moved by Councillor Sisson, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that council receives correspondence item 11.3 U-Links call for community research projects as information.
All those in favor, that's carried. 11.7. Councilor McKelvey.
So we're being asked to waive a fee that we would charge for a tent permit for an important charity, and I would like us to approve waiving that fee. I believe, I'm just trying to look, it was, how much is the fee for the? No, that was how much they raised. I was thinking it was like $300 or something, but no, I can't find it, so. But it's not a lot of money for the building permit fee for this, so could we not just waive that fee?
I think clerk has something.
So I did actually speak to our director of finance, only because I have just a little bit of concerns on waiving a building code permit. It is for a tent. So actually our director of finance had the same concerns and expressed that if we donate money to cover the cost of the permit, that would be fine, but not to just strictly just waive it.
Okay, so I'm not suggesting we waive the permit.
No, exactly,
They still have to get the permit.
right,
I'm suggesting that council agree to waive the fee for the permit.
correct. And the Director of Finance is suggesting that instead of saying waive the fee, that we donate
We-
the cost.
We don't donate, it's right in our policy, so, and your resolution proposed a $100 donation,
It
I
did.
believe.
Yeah.
And I understand the permit's 300, so
Okay.
council can waive the fee on a building
Yep.
permit. We won't waive the requirement for them to get a building permit, but, so I would propose that we will waive the fee for the building permit.
I would second that too, because we have a very clear policy on donation.
Councillor Sisson.
I too asked for this to be pulled because I think this is pretty important and might I remind you, this is coming to our township this year from another township. So I think we should do everything we can to keep it in Minden Township. I agree we should cover the cost.
So I just have, so it's Counselor McKelvey and it's Counselor Sisson. So the amendment that I've made is just that council approves of the request to waive the fee for the building, or sorry, for the tent permit.
All those in favor? That's carried. Excellent. Okay, go ahead.
Moved by
But-
Council, moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that council receives correspondence 11.7 Matt Duchesne Charity Golf Classic request fee waiver for tent permits information, and that, sorry, and that council approves of the request to waive the fee of the tent permit.
All those in favor? It's more of a feeling. Thank you. All right, it's 10:22. I would suggest we will take a break until 10:34. Welcome back. We resume with waste facilities. So Ms. Kosh, please take it away when you're ready.
Thank you, Mayor Carter, and through you. This report has been prepared to present proposed amendments to Waste Bylaw 23-34. At the February 12th regular council meeting, council supported and approved staff's recommendation to reduce the annual garbage bag allotment from 156 garbage bags per year to 104 garbage bags per year starting July 1st. The July 1st start date aligns with the term of the waste disposal card being July 1st to June 30th each year. Waste management programs and operations have evolved over the last couple of years, prompting this review and proposed amendments. The amendments in the waste bylaw will eliminate outdated provisions and provide clear direction to staff and site users, strengthening the township's ability to enforce waste management requirements. These waste management requirements are largely guided by regulatory compliance, environmental stewardship, and efforts to extend the life of the landfill. The amended bylaw will also allow for greater flexibility to adapt to future changes and requirements. Key changes in the amendments proposed include reducing the garbage bag allotment, increasing the contamination rate from 6% to 10%, removing language surrounding sorted and unsorted loads as it relates to recyclables and divertible material, adding language surrounding diversion and diversion materials, and increasing fines associated with offenses. And if council has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Councilor Ingram.
Through the chair, thanks, Chelsea. Why 10% from 6?
Because, so the current bylaw states the 6%, and then it has the unsorted and sorted loads, which has different waste disposal fees. So 10% is, I think, a little bit more reasonable. It's more identifiable. And then if we're going the route of not having the unsorted option,
Okay.
then that provides that additional flexibility as well.
Excellent. Have you thought about going forward, and I'm not talking this year, possibly in the future, have you thought about going to a plastic card that identifies the household and taps as they come in, sort of thing? I know it could be 10 years, it could be a year. I don't know what a cost would be, but it might be more efficient that we don't have to replace cards every year.
So through the chair, that's definitely been in discussion with the other townships as well.
Okay.
We actually issued a joint RFP last year for a electronic waste disposal card. There was some components to be able to incorporate landfill software as well, and the costs were huge. Yes. So it wasn't feasible at that time. I do think that there's other feasible options that are more cost effective
Okay.
that we will continue to look at
Excellent.
moving
Thank you.
forward.
Thanks, John.
So there's nothing about all of this that is simple. So just as a matter of interest, so I can bring in my car tires, my truck tires, my tractor tires, but I can't bring in my bicycle tire. And I can't bring in my wheelchair tire. Like, why do they make this so complicated?
For you, that is a question for the province. So that is another part of these amendments, is just referencing the appropriate regulation so that if that regulation changes, then we're not constantly updating this bylaw. So I did try to reference those where applicable. That's one of those complicated ones. And then just getting even tire pickups right now is a challenge. So yes, but that would be a question for the province.
Well, I just took it as you being the representative of the province in this issue.
No, no.
Okay, no, it's just that it just goes to show, because almost every grouping has things that are eligible and not eligible, and they don't necessarily, make sense. And so just keeping on top of this and doing these periodic updates is really important. Because we're obviously not going to make it simple, but we can at least make it manageable. Yes. Questions, Councillor Sisson?
You mentioned the reduced bag limit. Is that you're dropping to 2 from 3? Is that the plan?
So through the chair, the current bylaw allows for 3 bags per week. So when we went to the new waste disposal card, it was providing that 3-bag limit over a 1-year period. So essentially more flexibility. If you're away for a couple of weeks, you don't miss out on that limit. You can dispose of 156 garbage bags in 1-year period. So this is moving to the equivalent of 2 bags per week or 104 over a 1-year period. You're welcome.
Councilor McKelvey.
Just, you mentioned tires and I watched Dysart's meeting and I see where they have a tire issue of too many. So one ministry's telling us to don't have that many, not telling us, but telling other townships, you can't have that many, but then you mentioned, and it was mentioned at their meeting, it's really hard to get a pickup for the tires. So is that the province again? Is that?
So through the chair, yeah, that's the province is not communicating or being on the same page. So every site has different ECA capacity limits that are specified in it. So that could be where Dysart has reached an issue. So it's just something that we closely monitor and stay on top of and reach out to the province whenever we need that support or need to be heard. So I have done that last week. But the tire issue's been well over a year with them accepting tires. So.
Where do they have to go from us? Like, what's the nearest?
There's facilities set up everywhere in the province. So they did have a facility fire last year, which that was part of the rationale for the delay in pickup. So I'm not sure what it is right now.
Answering them.
Chair, new news. Does it become a hazard there where a point where we have to stop taking them? Will it, like, have you thought about that at all?
So through the chair, that's something that we'll closely monitor. And if there comes a time where we need to stop accepting them for a short period of time,
Sure.
then we would do that.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilor McKelvey.
I made notes on this bylaw and then I left the notes at home, but it's like the grocery store in the list, you know? Somewhere in here, I think it said that vacant land will not receive a card, which makes sense. They shouldn't be generating waste. I get that, but how are you going to implement that? How do you do that in your tax bills?
So through the chair, that's a carryover from the current bylaw as well, that vacant property doesn't receive a waste card. But it's never something that's been able to be enforced.
No.
With the new card, we were able to do that a little bit last year, but actually our new director of finance has come up with a solution that will allow us to pull out those tax bills moving forward and give them the appropriate card.
Perfect. Okay, and then there was another thing in here, and again, I'm not positive where, but in the budget, we included something, and I can't remember the word. Like the big tubes, and it was for organics. Thank you. Now I got it. Okay, so the organics, and I think it's in here that it's mandatory that we recycle that, which is fine. But what happens at the waste disposal sites that don't have the?
So through the chair, the programs that we will make mandatory being recycling and diversion programs would only be applicable at the sites that offer those programs.
Okay,
So if
that's-
you attend a site that doesn't have a certain diversion program, then it wouldn't be mandatory there. But there are certain provisions where we don't accept certain items at certain sites. So like fluorescent tubes and light bulbs, for example, are not accepted anywhere but Scotch line. So when it comes to organic waste, that would be something that wouldn't be mandatory at the 3 transfer stations, but it would be at Scotch Line until such time that we possibly expand that program to those sites.
Any other questions? Resolution.
Moved by Councilor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell, that council receives report 2605, Waste Management, regarding proposed amendments to Waste Bylaw 2334, and that council approves the proposed amendments and revised Waste Bylaw, being Bylaw 2648. And further, the council repeals Bylaw 2334 and replaces it with Bylaw 2648 attached hereto, and that the Bylaw 2648 be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda for approval.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you very much. Ms. McGuigan. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So before you is report 2609, the Minden Hills Cultural Center Advisory Committee April meeting minutes. I'm more than welcome to take any questions.
Questions? Resolution?
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Johansson, that council receive report 2609, Community Services Department, Minden Hills Cultural Center Advisory Committee meeting minutes dated April 14th, 2026 as information.
All those in favor? That is carried. No.
And moving on to report 2610, the Minden Hills Cultural Center Strategic Plan and Strategic Action Plan Goals. So this is a requirement of the Community Museum Operating Grant known as CMOG. So each year when we apply for this grant, they have different requirements that we need to meet. And this year's requirement was the strategic plan and action plans. So we looked at, so the manager of cultural services looked at the previous strategic plan and then started to add in and the projection for the 6 priorities that we would have from 2026 to 2030 with review with the Minden Hills Advisory Committee members as well. Happy to take any questions.
Questions? So not necessarily related to this, but just there's lots of building activity going on at your sites over there. Is everything moving according to schedule?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just, sorry, I'm just a point of order. Counselor Ingram tried to ask that the last and he was shot down pretty severely, so I'm assuming that's still the rule today.
Apparently so.
Well, I'm just,
Thank you. And read the resolution.
well, that's rude. I'm just trying to figure out what the rules are here for one meeting compared to another. So.
Moved by Counselor Ingram, seconded by Counselor Johansson, that council receive report 2610, Community Services Department, Minden Hills Cultural Center Strategic Plan and Strategic Action Plan Goals as information. And that council approves the Minden Hills Cultural Center Strategic Plan and Strategic Action Plan Goals for submission to the Community Museum Operating Grant.
All those in favor? It's carried. Thank you. Chief Kruger.
Good morning through you, Mr. Chair. The report before you has the attached agreement and a bylaw with it to formalize a 2-department response for larger structure fires, wildfires, and technical rescue calls between the county fire departments. Since 2024, we've been operating on a handshake agreement. The purpose of this agreement is to formalize that agreement. It will improve firefighter safety and reduce the time required for responses. And I think other than that, I'll answer any questions you may.
Questions? Councilor McKelvey?
This is great. Anything that gets fire departments there quicker is the best, but I just have questions on some of the other, we have an automatic aid agreement with Dysart, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct, yes.
So they automatically get called for ones that are in that area and we pay them for. Is that superseded now by this or
So those agreements are still under review.
under review,
Yes,
but not in effect?
they are still in effect. Yes.
Okay.
This
Just trying
is
to figure out.
through the chair.
chicken
At
and
this
egg.
time, this agreement is not replacing. This
Okay.
is to augment the current agreements that are already in place.
Okay. If I may,
Okay.
and I realize all the townships are being asked to sign these and we're probably one of the last ones, so leave it to me to have questions. I have to question the liability insurance of $1 million. I mean, nobody has $1 million insurance on vehicles, so I just thought it was, well, we've got
Through-
liability insurance of 5 million. Yeah, that would, but you know, they're saying it's no less than 1 million. Well, like it really shouldn't be any less than 5 million on one of those trucks.
Through the chair, I can't really answer that. The agreement, everything was put through both legal and the four clerks department, so I'm assuming that that was sufficient.
Seems very low to me, but I know we're one of the last ones, so I'm not gonna die on this hill. Doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, okay.
Clerk, go ahead. Are there any other questions for Small?
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Deputy Marshall, that council receives report 26005 Fire Automatic Two Department Response Agreement as information, and that bylaw 2650 to authorize the execution of the agreement be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda for approval and implementation, and further that staff forward the agreement to corresponding municipalities for signature.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Chief. Ms. Doherty. Please start.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for report 26-23, which was for the public meeting this morning. I don't have anything further to add.
Are there any questions? Seeing none. Resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Counselor McKelvey, that council receives report 2623 planning's information, and further that bylaw 2649, being a bylaw to approve a zoning bylaw amendment for land subject of PLZBA 2026015, be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda.
All those in favor? It's carried. One of your shorter visits. And clerk, you're taking this. Go ahead.
So through the chair, this report is brought forward to establish a 2026 Joint Compliance Audit Committee. Since 2014, during the election, it has been the county clerk's practice to form a joint committee. Seeing this has been coordinated without any concerns, the clerks agreed to proceed for the 2026-2030 term and jointly advertised for its members. A municipal Joint Compliance Audit Committee is an independent adjudicative body established by partnered municipalities to review potential violations of election campaign finance rules under the MEA. The committee operates under section 8837 of the MEA, which requires municipalities to establish a process for reviewing compliance with campaign finance rules. The committee must be comprised of not fewer than 3 and not more than 7 members. Before council today and attached to the report are the terms of reference and procedures for the committee, along with the appointment bylaw and recommended members for appointment. Staff are also seeking delegated authority to secure future appointments of the committee and a licensed auditor should they be required. And I'm happy to address any questions of council. I will say that we have 3 of the members that are reoccurring from the previous election. And then we did review an application from David Nusco, which actually has past experience with joint committee, as well as a lawyer. So happy to answer any further questions.
Deputy Mayor Shaw.
So through you, so Vicky, we're appointing 3 and that Caitlin Cougar is the alternate.
That's correct.
So, if it can be up to 7, is there a reason we're not just gonna, I mean, if 4 people are interested, is there a reason why we wouldn't take all 4? Or were there more and this is the number you've come down to?
We really try hard not to make it an even member at the table, just so
Okay,
that
that's fair.
you're not
Okay, that answers my
defeating a
question.
vote.
Yep,
Yeah,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions? Seeing none, let's read the resolution.
Moved by Counselor Sisson, seconded by Deputy Marshall, that council receives report 2623 Joint Compliance Audit Committee for the 2026-2030 term of council as information, and that council appoints the recommended members to the committee and adopts the terms of reference and procedures. And further, that council delegates authority to the clerk to secure future committee member appointments in consultation with the clerks in the county of Haliburton prior to bringing forward the required appointed bylaw. And further, that the clerk be authorized in consultation with the director of finance to appoint a licensed auditor for the purpose of conducting compliance audits. And further, that bylaw 2651 be referred to the bylaw section of the agenda for approval.
All those in favor? It's carried. Right, bylaws, yeah.
Moved by Counselor Hennessy, seconded by Counselor Ingram. Be it resolved that the following bylaws be received, read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2648, waste management. Bylaw 2649, zoning bylaw amendment for PLZBA 2026015 Berry. Bylaw 2650, automatic two-department response agreement. Bylaw 2651, joint compliance audit committee.
All those in favor? That is carried. Confirming bylaw.
Moved by Counselor McKelvey, seconded by Counselor Sisson, that bylaw 2653 being a bylaw to confirm proceedings of council held during its meeting of May 28, 2026, be received, read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All those in favor? That is carried. Adjournment.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Counselor Sisson. Be it resolved that the May 28th, 2026 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 10:55 a.m.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone. Our next regular council meeting is scheduled for June 11th at 9 a.m. Thank you.